On this channel, we've gone over a lot of D&D terms. Skills, races, classes, the square root of the circumference of the sun.
That's for the other channel!
But there is still one burning question that remains. How do you take all of this and turn it into a character sheet that you can actually use to, well, play D&D? That, my fellow adventurers, is what we're going to be talking about today. So get your paper, your pencils, your anime swords, and your Baldur's Gate fanfiction, because it's time to learn. This time on A Nerdy Guide to D&D. There are three primary ways to build a D&D character sheet: pre-built, online tools, and by hand. Let's start with this one because it is by far the easiest. However, a disclaimer before we begin. The content in this video is based off of the assumption that you kinda already have an idea of what type of character you want to make, i.e. their race, their class, a little bit of backstory, what they do for a job, etc. If you don't know anything about races or classes, kind of like we run a channel on this sort of thing. Additionally, we're going to be showing you how to build a character in D&D 5th edition, the one most people play nowadays, not 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, because those scare me. Now, on to the content. Always forget to take off the headphones. Some of you might be ecstatic to know that you don't always have to build a D&D character completely from scratch. In fact, there are a plethora of resources online that offer pre-built character sheets for different combinations of races and classes. One such example is actually the D&D website itself, which offers pre-generated warriors, scoundrels, nerds, and Discord kitten pocket healers. Ooh. Each option here comes with 10 character sheets of different stat alignments and backgrounds that you can download and peruse. Then once you find one that works for you, make any tweaks that are necessary for the campaign you're involved in. You'll have to ask your DM about that. Find a character image off of Google or Pinterest perhaps. You're good to go. An obvious pro with this option is that it significantly cuts down on the amount of time you spend in character creation. An obvious downside being that you don't get as much customizability with it. But if it's your first campaign and you're just looking for something simple, things like this can help streamline you into the hobby. And of course, make sure to check with your DM ahead of time to make sure they even allow pre-generated characters. I've never known one not to, but better to be safe. However, let's say you want to dip your toe in a little deeper. You want to add your own flair to your character, but you don't want to have to write down every single stat by hand, do all of the calculations, have an existential crisis, drop out of college, become leader of the mole people, and bring about nuclear annihilation. Well, fret not, brave, probably confused viewer, for there are several online tools and websites that help simplify the process of creating a character sheet so as not to overwhelm you on your first time. Three that I can personally recommend are D&D Beyond, Dungeon Master's Vault, and fastcharacter.com, all of which will be in the description below. Each of these websites can go a long way in help simplifying the process of making your first character. But of course, it can always help to have a guiding hand. So let's you and I take a quick trip where I'll show you how to use one of these tools to make a character fast and easy. Epic transition, go! No, not that lever. The other lever. No, the one after. Ah! And here we are, D&D Beyond, the tool that I have personally used the most to make characters, thus making it the one I'm most comfortable walking you through. While there is a paid version of the website that offers unlimited characters, with a free account you can still make 6 character sheets in case you happen to be low on funds because the world is constantly hurtling itself farther and farther into a capitalistic hellscape. To create a character, all you have to do is mosey your mouse over to the top right-hand corner where you'll find the character button. On the next screen will be a create a character button, which will bring you here. For this example, we'll be using the standard character creator, but you can also browse those pre-mades I mentioned earlier, create a completely random character, or do a quick build which simplifies the process even more. Once you click start building, you'll be brought here, and I know there's already a lot of text on the screen, but stay with me because most of this you won't have to worry about. Starting off, this is where your character picture and name go if you already have those. Second, I recommend turning some of this stuff off because it just clears some of the clutter in my mind. mind. Down a little farther, you have the advancement type and hit point type. Advancement type is basically how your character levels up. This is determined by your DM, so make sure to ask them about this. Hit point type basically asks if you want to roll to determine your health or have it set at fixed values. This also might be determined by your DM depending on your campaign, so I recommend you ask them about this as well. If you couldn't tell, there's a common theme in this video that keeps getting brought up a couple times. Lastly, encumbrance. Turn this off. Encumbrance kind of works how it does in video games, where if you're carrying too much, you'll get certain penalties. Most campaigns have it disabled, but just in case, check with your DM. I feel like we're gonna need that soundbite a lot in the future. Once you get that out of the way, it's time to pick your race, class, and ability scores. You can kind of do these in any order. Again, if you already have an idea of what character you want to play, most of this can be pretty plug and play. For example, if you want to play a Dragonborn, just click it and click choose race. Dunzo. It also lists out all of your racial abilities and gives a blue highlight to anything you need to further select, such as your draconic ancestry for Dragonborn. Next is class. Let's say you want to be a barbarian, just click. Double Dunzo. There are a couple extra things here, like here's where you select your starting level, which is also determined by... Wait, let me get the soundbite. Ask your DM. There we go. On top of that, this is where you can also manage your health and hit points. We'll get more into how this works when we get to option 3, but if you set your HP to fixed on that other screen that we were on, you won't have to worry about this anyways. Next up, you have your ability scores, which you have 3 ways of determining. Standard array gives you 6 numbers, and you plug them into where you think they make sense. For example, if you're playing a barbarian, strength and constitution are probably good to have, so I'd put the 15 and 14 in there, and then just keep going until it's all filled out. You'll also notice that down below you can see the total score from that stat, combining any bonuses from your race, class, background. It can be very handy. Second option is manual, where you roll dice to determine the 6 numbers you have to work with. The pro here being that if you roll well, your stats can be way better than the standard array. The obvious con being that if you don't roll well, you might be having to make a new character sheet sooner rather than later. Lastly is point buy, which is similar to some other video game RPGs out there. Every stat starts at 8, and you have 27 points to distribute until they're all gone. Bada bing, bada boom. Now you might be wondering which of these 3 options you should choose. And I think we all know the answer to that question. Ask your DM. Next up, we have the background section, which is mostly just additional backstory and detail stuff, selecting things like what you look like, enemies, allies, faith, etc. However, this option right here, your background, can actually afford you some bonuses. For example, selecting the soldier background, if that fits with your character's backstory, makes you better in certain skills and using certain tools, gives you a game that you're good at, and some extra flavor text for your DM to inevitably use against you in some way that will leave reeling from the trauma for years to come. God, I love this game. Lastly, you choose your starting equipment, weapons, supplies, so on and so forth, and just like that, got your character sheet. There's also a bit of a weak snap. Let me see if I can. There we go. You'll notice all your ability scores are listed here, numbers for rolling on things here, health over here, actions and inventory and descriptions, oh my. If this is your first time in a campaign, your DM will more than likely walk you through how to read this and use it to make rolls, so we won't go too in-depth on that for right now. Last thing to note is that if you are using a spellcaster of some kind, clicking here in the class section will pull up the screen where you can select the spells you know by clicking Learn. Playing a spellcaster will also create another tab in this section dedicated to keeping track of your spells and spell slots, among other things. There are also buttons in the top right for when your party takes a short or long rest that help streamline some things in that regard. You can export this as a PDF in case you need to print it for an IRL session, or just access it in the website for any online sessions you have. And that about does it. Means we're on to option 3. Buckle up, adventurers. Get your war hats on. because we are venturing into a realm that most people do not make it back from. The realm of you, Zeus, and your dramatic timing. The third and final option is to make your character sheet from scratch. Well, mostly. We're gonna be getting a template for it, but mostly from scratch. To start, you'll need a character sheet template, which can be easily downloaded from the D&D website. Again, link in description. There should be a fillable version that looks like this. I can already feel my brain beginning to sweat. Why does it taste like lemon? Now, if you're going to use this method, I highly recommend you get a copy of the D&D 5th edition Player's Handbook. Not only does it walk you through how to make a character sheet in case you need to reference this process in the future, but it also goes over all the stat changes and abilities you'll need to note down from your race, class, and background. Speaking of which, those are the 3 things you'll need to fill in first in the upper right-hand corner of this character sheet, along with your alignment, character name, and starting level. Through the power of my magical editing snaps, I shall input this information on this character sheet as an example. Next, ability scores. Same thing as before, you can either input a standard array, roll for them, or do a point buy. To refresh, a standard array is when you plug the numbers 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8 into the stats that make the most sense for your character. Point buy is when you start every stat at 8 and then distribute 27 points amongst them. They're all gone. To roll for your stats, take 4 6-sided dice, or 46, roll them, get rid of the lowest number, and then add the remaining 3 together. Then put that added up number into one of your 6 ability scores. For example, let's say I rolled 46 and got a 6, a 5, a 3, and a 2. I'd get rid of the 2, it's the lowest, and then add the rest of them together to get a 14. Do this process until you've got a number in each of those slots. Are you with me? Are you with me? Come on, I believe in you. We can get through this. Once you've got those numbers there, it's time to determine your ability modifiers, which are determined by your scores in increments of 2. Big words, let me explain. If you have a 10 in any of your abilities, put a little 0 in this little section below. This means that that stat is average for your character. It gives you no bonuses, but also no penalties. If you have an 11 or 12 in any of these stats, put a +1 here. This means your character is slightly above average in that skill, giving them a small bonus whenever they use it to do something. For example, if you use your character to try and move a heavy crate, having higher strength gives them a higher chance of success. The +1 being applied to your roll when you try to do it. On the flip side, if a stat has a 9 or 8, put a -1 here. Your character is slightly below average in this skill, giving them a slight penalty whenever they try to use it. But let's say your character is really good in something, so they have a 13 or a 14. That means they have a +2 here. 15 or 16 gives them a +3, 17 or 18 gives them a +4, so on and so forth. Likewise, a 7 or a 6 means a -2, so on and so forth down the line. That's what increments of 2 means. Additionally, if one of your character stats changes for whatever reason, make sure to adjust these modifiers accordingly. Next, your proficiency bonus. This is determined by your character's level. If your character is starting at level 1, this is a +2. If they're level 5 though, this increases to a +3 and continues to increase as your character continues leveling up. Next, your saving throws. Whatever is in these little circles goes in these slots as well. Got a +1 to strength, you also have a +1 to your strength saving throws. Same thing goes for your skills here too. If a skill has Dex next to it, put your dexterity ability modifier in that slot and continue this down the line. Basically matching ability scores to their corresponding skills. Stay with me, adventurer, we're almost there. Do not let the horns of Valhalla call to you yet, because we are about to talk about your proficiencies. Both your race, class, and background will give you certain proficiencies in some of the skills and saving throws we've already talked about. Use the Player's Handbook to look up your race, class, and background to see what proficiencies they give you. For example, let's say your background gives you a proficiency in animal handling. There are 2 things you need to do. Number 1, color in that little dot next to that skill. Next, add whatever your proficiency bonus is to that skill. So if you add a +2 to animal handling because of your character's wisdom stat, but you're a level 1 character with proficiency in that skill, add another 2 to that skill to make it a +4. And add that number to anything you have proficiency in. From here on, it's mostly just simple addition. Your passive perception, that's just 10 plus whatever is next to your perception skill after all of that other stuff. AC, that is 10 plus the little number under your dexterity stat, aka your dexterity ability modifier, plus any bonuses you get from your armor. Most starting armors give you a +1, maybe a +2 to this stat. That dexterity ability modifier also gets put in here for your initiative. Your speed is determined by your race. Read the player's handbook to jot that down. We're so close. I know you can do it. Prove your Algebra 1 teacher wrong. Finish this fight of numbers and carnage. Your hit points, your health, the thing that gives you life. This is determined by your class. Each class has a hit dice that helps determine their health. Wizards, not that beefy usually. Their hit die is a 6. Barbarians, Salt Bay is looking them up and down, they have a D12. To determine your health, do this. If you are a level 1 character, take the maximum number from your class's hit dice. For example, a barbarian's would be 12, D12 max 12. Then add whatever your constitution ability modifier is to that number. That is your max health for a level 1 barbarian character. Then, for every level after 1, do that same process, but roll your hit dice this time. Don't just add the maximum amount. For example, let's say I had a level 3 barbarian with a +1 to constitution. This means my level 1 health would be a 13, 12 plus 1. Then for every level after 1, in this case there's 2, I would roll a d12. Let's say rolling a d12 twice gives me an 8 and a 5. I then add 1 to each of those because constitution modifier, giving me a 9 and a 6. Now I add 13, my level 1 health, 9 and 6 together to get my character's maximum health for level 3. And every time they level up, I'll roll another d12, add 1, assuming that's still my constitution ability modifier, and add that to my maximum health. There we go. Then from here, it's mostly just filling things in from the player's handbook. Any equipment you select goes here, while any abilities from your race or class get put down here. For example, if you were playing a Dragonborn Barbarian, this is where you would jot down what your Rage and Breath weapon do for future reference. Attacks and spellcasting is for jotting down any actions your character would typically take in combat, i.e. using a short sword or casting magic missile. Language box is for languages. I'm still learning Common, so that might be an issue for me. Got some personality traits or flaws you want to write down for your character? Put them here. Not enough space to describe your character and their backstory? Well, you got the whole second page for that. And last but not least, the spells page to list out all the spells your character knows. Your spellcasting ability is determined by your class. Look that up in the player's handbook. For example, bards use charisma, while wizards use intelligence to cast their spells. And finally, we got the last 2 calculations. It's been a long road. I lost feeling in my legs 4 minutes back, but we're finally here. Spell save DC is 8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Your spellcasting ability modifier is the little number underneath whatever stat you listed here. You listed intelligence here for using a wizard, and use your intelligence modifier when you add all this stuff up. Lastly, your spell attack bonus is the exact same calculation we just used, minus the 8. It's just your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Even if your character's class doesn't naturally give them spells, like if you're a barbarian or fighter, it's still a good idea to figure this stuff out in case you find like an enchanted ring or item that casts spells for you. These numbers will still come into play when you're using that. And that's it. We did it. We're done. You now know the 3 main methods of making a D&D character sheet. So go out there, brave adventurers. Do not let the shackles of ignorance bind you any longer. You have the knowledge to make any number of character sheets for any number of campaigns. If this video helped you in any way, let us know in the comments. Or if you have any outstanding questions, also let us know that in the comments. Or if you just like had a good day, week, or whatever, like also let us know, because that's cool. Links to all of the resources we talked about are down in the description below, along with the meaning of life. Don't miss it. I'm going to go hibernate for another month, so I'll see you guys later. This is Korg the Mighty signing off for a nerdy guide to D&D. Snap!